Why is Israel, this tiny little Jewish nation that sits at the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea, looked upon today as a deep well of inspiration and innovation and invention that has influenced so many fields of human endeavor? Does Israel have a secret means of progress and prospering that other nations do not have? Answers next in this episode of The Prophetic Connection. You know, as I've been saying over and over again in this latest series of The Prophetic Connection, Israel is a blessing to all nations, but Israel is a blessing to us individually. I'm sure that most people have no idea just how much Jewish innovation and invention is influencing their daily lives. It is, in fact, a part of their daily lives. It's simply that they do not recognize the influence of Israel on us, on our lives daily.
When they get up, the first thing they do after going into the bathroom, God willing, is they're going to check their email, right? They're going to check their instant messenger, they're going to look at their email, go to Facebook, open up their computer. Now, inside that computer is a chip today, most likely from Intel. Now, Intel should have on its chip something that says Israel inside, because Intel's chip architecture today is almost exclusively developed in Israel. The multi-core architecture, which has more or less saved the company of Intel, the Pentium chip, the Centrino chip, these were all developed here at Intel Israel, where there are over 6,000 employees, the second largest activity for Intel outside of Silicon Valley. Where was instant messaging invented? It was invented here in Israel by four 20-something ponytailed guys. They created a company called ICQ, which was bought by AOL and was the leader in instant messaging.
AOL paid $407 million to buy this new technology. This was the highest price ever paid to an Israeli company for its technology. But this was just the beginning of the communication revolution. Israeli researchers had peered into the future and were already busy developing new forms of cordless telephones.
The very first cell phone in the world was created here in Israel by Motorola, an American company that has development activities in Israel. So Motorola Israel created the first cell phone. Those big things, remember, that used to be sort of like weaponry. There were these huge things. The whole idea of a portable phone came here.
Cell phones have now become so commonplace, a rite of passage for new teenagers, that it's now difficult for us to conceive our modern world without them. 10 years ago, in the United States alone, there were 34 million cell phone users. Today, the number of cell phone users in the US has now grown to over 203 million, not to mention the evolving worldwide popularity and influence of this Israeli invention.
At some point, you're going to want to check maybe your voicemail, see if you got any voice messages overnight. And you'll go to your cordless phone at home and you'll pick up that cordless phone, which you spent $9.99 at Sam's Club or some discounter. Would you believe that that phone has a chip in it from Israel? About 80% of them do, from a company called DSPC. Never heard of it, but the brain behind your cordless phone is made by an Israeli company. And then you actually check your voicemail box. And your voicemail box is being run probably by an Israeli company called Converse, which is the leading supplier of voicemail in America, certainly, and around the world. Companies like AT&T and Verizon and others use the Converse technology.
Israeli invention is the underlying influence or source of so much of what we do or use in our daily lives. Gadgets and other things we depend on and usually take for granted, including medical advancements so crucial to our health and well-being, For example, how many people would be aware that Teva, the company that sells more pills to Americans in capsule form than any other, is an Israeli company? In fact, Teva is the world's leading generic pharmaceutical company, and one of the reasons Israel is at the forefront of medical research.
If, God forbid, that person needs help with some of the new technologies in terms of healthcare, such as anti-cancer or spinal cord refusion, we are leading the way in so many different areas. There's a wonderful Israeli company called Given Imaging, who essentially invented the pill cam. They came out of the army. They took a miniature camera, which was originally developed for a missile, and they put it in a capsule. You swallow this capsule. It's one-time use only. And during that one time, the capsule images your body. And trust me, the alternative, which is a lot more invasive, is a lot less pleasant. And this is saving, again, countless lives and making people's lives better.
Israeli research is focused on virtually every area of human need. Its researchers are working hard to make the world a better place. From solar experiments to software development, from telephony to human wellness, Israeli scientists are fully engaged in the task of improving the quality of life for all of Earth's citizens.
Well, I definitely think that in many ways, what we've created here, well, this campus, but also in other places in Israel, exceeds what even Herzl, with his vision, has envisioned. So I think it's quite amazing what's been created here.
As we've seen over and over again in this series, the land of Israel was virtually devoid of people for nearly 2,000 years. And the people of Israel who really belonged in that land were separated from it. And yet throughout the scriptures, God promised the return of Israel, of the people of Israel, back to their ethnic homeland. Listen to this prophecy that's found on the lips of Ezekiel, who was one of the exiles from the first dispersion of Israel caused by the Babylonians. God placed him in Babylon among the exiles so he could prophesy to them and encourage them. But Ezekiel's prophecies were not only for those days, but for the future, in fact, a future that is unfolding before us in the 21st century. Here's the prophecy in Ezekiel 36, verse 1. And you, son of man, prophesy to the mountains of Israel and say, O mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord. And then God goes on to speak to the prophet to tell him he's going to bring his people back. They will return. They will restore. They will rebuild on the ancient high places that were left desolate after their destruction and their scattering among the Gentile nations. And then as we continue reading in Ezekiel 36, as we find in verse 16, moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, when the house of Israel dwelt in their own land, they defiled it by their own ways and deeds. And then an explanation from God, verse 19. So I scattered them among the nations, and they were dispersed throughout the countries. I judged them according to their ways and their deeds. And then, notice this, when they came to the nations, wherever they went, they profaned my holy name. When they said of them, these are the people of the Lord, and yet they have gone out of his land. In other words, this is an indictment on the lips of the Gentiles saying, if you really are the chosen nation, the people of Israel, what are you doing among us? But this is God speaking through the prophet Ezekiel. And then we read in verse 21 of Ezekiel 36, but I had concern for my holy name, which the house of Israel had profaned among the nations wherever they went. Therefore, say to the house of Israel, thus says the Lord God, I do not do this for your sake, O house of Israel. Meaning, I haven't brought you back. I haven't restored you. I haven't renewed you because of your doings, but for my holy name's sake, which you have profaned among the nations wherever you went. And I will sanctify my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned in their midst. And the nations shall know that I am the Lord, says the Lord God, when I am hallowed in you before their eyes. For I will take you from among the nations, gather you out of all countries, and bring you into your own land. This is an amazing prophecy given in Babylon 2,500 years ago during the first exile of Israel. And of course, there was a second exile in AD 70 under the Roman legions. And then for 1,878 years, the Jews were scattered among the nations a second time. But in all that time, this prophecy, these prophecies in the Holy Bible stood waiting for the moment when God would keep his promises and fulfill his word.
They have made the deserts bloom and turned the desolate places into a Garden of Eden. But to do so in a land where water is a scarce and cherished resource, they needed to find efficient means of irrigation and water conservation. This led to the development of ever-improving irrigation technology, something Israel is now unselfishly sharing with other nations as they struggle to feed ever-increasing populations. Here too, Israel is blessing the nations by showing them how to increase crop yields while conserving water at the same time.
Israel stands first in the world where it comes to water recycling. 70% of the sewage water of Israel are being recycled. Second to Israel stands Spain with less than 15% of recycling. We recycle whenever it is possible. We're in the midst of the desert. There is an army base not far away from here, and you can hear the jets flying around. Their water are being recycled. The water are being recycled from prison, which is located nearby, in the middle of the desert, a highly security prison. The water are being recycled, and see the results. When we look down into the valley, we can see the olive tree next to us. A little bit further away, there is a vineyard, and further away there is more olives, and right up there at the hilltop is actually the very prison itself. As I said, a highly security prison, yet the inmates are using water. Our philosophy is that simple. Whenever there is people, there is water, and whenever there is water, there is sewage water. And the sewage water is what we're going to recycle, and there are the results. We are exporting this knowledge to the whole world. The largest water distillation plant in the world is in Israel, built by Israeli knowledge. And this knowledge goes all around the world. This is the blessing of water which comes from the desert.
What began in the Negev desert as a local initiative to enable the growing of crops and fruit in a place short of water has become, in recent years, a means of blessing other nations by showing them how they too can conserve water and increase crop yields. Located in the heart of the Israeli desert, Netafim is a cutting-edge company which began on a kibbutz, a communal farm called Hatzarim.
When Moses brought us here to Israel, he forgot to pass on his technology of getting water out of the rock. And we are here in the desert, no water, very saline soil, and we had to find something to get our food out of the soil. So we were looking for an industry for the kibbutz, and drip irrigation was the natural answer.
Netafim invented a revolutionary drip-based tube that slowly releases the exact amount of water needed right to the root of the plant. This is an efficient and remarkable irrigation process, which helps to prevent waste and limit evaporation.
You can get in strawberries 5 times the yield as opposed to a regular open field. In tomatoes, you can get 6 times the yield. So when we say grow more with less, this is exactly what we mean. I mean, it is an answer to poor regions as well as to good, sophisticated farming operations in Europe, Canada, America, what have you.
Netafim was born out of the necessity to produce crops where water was scarce, in the desert regions of Israel. The company is now exporting its technology as a means of blessing the nations by easing their food shortages.
We started Netafim in January of 1966. And at the beginning, it was just as if just for us, for our farms. And the farm manager at that time said, let's keep it a secret so that our competitors in growing peaches and apricots will not be able to get such yields. And of course, we opened it to the world, and we started with South Africa and Australia and the United States and then Europe, and today we are all over.
Netafim is also reaching out successfully to the poorer nations in Africa, India, and even war-torn regions such as Afghanistan.
We have published books, we have our experts to go along with those systems and to guide and to educate people how to do it. And by this, turn them from people who cannot make it or cannot make their day to people who can at least produce their own food and maybe a little extra to sell to their neighbors and then make a little money.
I really think that Moshe, as we call him, or Moses, as other people call him, or Musa, as other people, would be proud if he could see. I mean, okay, he didn't get into Israel. He stood on Mount Nebo and watched. And we continued. And we came here to the middle of the desert, and when he said that this is going to be a land of milk and honey, it wasn't automatically. I mean, you have to work for it, you have to invest, but this is what you get. And this is what we got here with drip irrigation, with hard labor, and this is what we are bringing to the world today.
The invention of the drip irrigation system occurred because of necessity of a community in the desert where there was a scarcity of water. And so they found a way to conserve water and live in the desert. But what began as a necessity for that Netafim community became instead a blessing for the whole world, because they realized they could export this technology to the nations. A drip at the base of every plant, and within the drips, the nutrients that Israel added, giving sometimes 10 times the average yield that the crops could produce. From necessity to invention to influence to blessing all nations. Israel ingenuity on broad display.
Today, more than ever before, it seems as though our world is at a tipping point as generation after generation slips further into chaos and darkness. Not since the days of Noah has the earth seen such decadence, immorality, and violence. But what does this mean for those who believe, and what consequences await for those who do not? As it was in the days of Noah, the DVD series of Dr. John Tweedie's 21st season of The Prophetic Connection explores the scriptures to uncover the meaning behind the signs of these troubled times. Call the number on your screen now, 1-888-206-1986, or visit C4IAmerica.com to become a new monthly partner with your gift of just $25 a month or more, and you will receive this DVD set, ideal for individuals or small group studies, along with the bi-monthly newspaper, Israel the Prophetic Connection. We're waiting to hear from you. It's abundantly clear that Israeli ingenuity is changing our world for the better. If this is true, then it's true in particular when applied to the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, one of the world's leading research centers. The institute was established in 1933 by Dr. Chaim Weizmann, when the population of Palestine was only 400,000. The institute's founder, who later became the first president of Israel, envisioned a world-class scientific research and study center. In his vision, he saw a research center which would not only attract the world's best scientific minds, but would also offer training opportunities to young scientists who showed unusual potential. Weizmann's dream is now a reality.
If you look at the result of science, they're universal. This is a universal language. The end result is truly universal. If you look at drugs like the Copaxone, developed here at the Weizmann Institute for Multiple Sclerosis, well, that drug is used by everybody. You be Jews, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, whatever you are, that drug will work for you.
Copaxone has proven to be of significant benefit to those suffering from the debilitating effects of multiple sclerosis.
But that research started in 1966 by Professor Michael Sella and Professor Ruth Arnon, who did not want at that time to develop a new drug for multiple sclerosis, but actually were very much interested into tissues and polymers and biochemistry. That started in 1966, and the first drug was commercialized by Teva in 1996. This is 30 years of research. That's something this is really an amazing impact in the world because it changed the way people could live, and multiple sclerosis is of course a terrible disease.
Yet the Weizmann Institute is not only about medical research and the desire to find cures for seemingly incurable diseases. Among other things, scientists and engineers are hard at work developing highly efficient solar energy technology. They're engaged in the ongoing struggle to conserve our planet's valuable and diminishing resources.
You really have to remember that the goal of this institute is not to create these products. The goal of the institute is to hire the best possible researchers, to give them the freedom to think, so that they can, through the understanding of nature, produce new ideas that can actually solve important issues in this world.
Today, the flag of Israel, the Star of David, flutters in the wind above the Knesset, the Jewish parliament in Jerusalem. And from that parliament, laws are developed for a nation reborn from the ashes that today is influencing, blessing all nations through innovation and invention. It is an amazing story. And we would have to say, looking at this, we would have to say, look at what the Lord has done. Look at the promises that he has fulfilled. As this little nation, Jewish nation, fights for her very survival against other nations that have threatened to wipe her off the map. And yet, in the midst of all of this animosity, hatred, and suffering, Israel continues to fulfill her destiny, to be a light to all nations, reflecting heaven's light, and then to bless all nations. And Israel continues to do this in spite of all the nations have done to Israel. This can only be explained as the heart of God functioning in the heart of a people that he called into existence in the first place.
The democratic state of Israel stands in stark contrast to the dictatorships that surround her. Israel values freedom of speech for all her citizens. And because Jews have always attached importance to learning, the opportunity to acquire a good education is considered the right of every Israeli, whether Arab, Jew, or otherwise. Israel has the highest per capita ratio of university degrees in the world. 24% of those in Israel's workforce have university degrees. This gives Israel a third-place ranking in the industrialized world after the United States and Holland. Israel also produces more scientific papers per capita than any other nation. As well, she has the highest rate of patents filed per capita among all nations, and on a per capita basis, the largest number of startup companies in the world. With the exception of the United States and Canada, Israel has the largest number of companies listed on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. Israel can also claim the highest average living standard in the Middle East. All of this means that Israel exists as a shining example to the nations around her. Barely more than 60 years old, she has demonstrated through innovation and hard work what is possible under the freedom that all democracies enjoy, when education has value, and when every citizen is given opportunity for advancement according to his or her abilities. Because of Israel's vast experience fighting terrorism and wars of defense, and because of Israel's tremendous expertise with international disasters, Israel is a world leader in search and rescue. Israel's cutting-edge emergency and medical abilities, as well as her long tradition of helping those in need, make the nation of Israel among the first to respond during international crisis. During the earthquake in Haiti in 2010, hundreds of Israeli doctors, nurses, engineers, medics, and rescue workers were sent to Haiti to help victims. Israel was one of the first to set up a trauma unit in Haiti, as well as surgical and emergency rooms with the ability to service up to 500 people a day. Haiti's utter devastation became just one more opportunity for Israel to bless those in need and shine as an exemplary light to the nations.
I think ultimately what's going on here is a fulfillment of God's promise. I have lots of friends who aren't religious people, who aren't observant people, who aren't Bible believers, and they have trouble understanding Jewish history. They have trouble seeing what's going on and making sense of it. I mean, the whole saga of the Jews is completely unintelligible, in my opinion, unless you are a God-fearing, God-believing person. It doesn't make any sense. It's completely illogical. Even that great rationalist, I think Spinoza, was asked, what is his best proof for the existence of God? And someone said, his answer was, the Jews, okay? The fact that we are still here thousands of years after having been exiled from our land, and not just surviving and hanging on by our fingernails, but creating all this incredible technology and bettering the world, is simply a fulfillment of God's promise.
This past year has been incredibly challenging, from the attacks on Israel to the ongoing struggles faced by the Jewish people worldwide. We've seen heartache, loss, and resilience like never before. Yet in the midst of these trials, C4I has been a source of hope and support in the Holy Land, providing aid, comfort, and a tangible reminder that they are not alone. Your generosity makes this life-changing work possible. Your one-time gift of just $25 or more helps us continue this vital mission. And as a thank you for your support, you will receive the bi-monthly newspaper Israel the Prophetic Connection, filled with stories and articles keeping you informed and up to date on all that is happening in Israel. Call now, 1-888-206-1986, or visit c4iamerica.com to make your one-time donation. Together, we can make a difference for the people of Israel.